Charles was 18 years old. He said, I'm going to be a rich man, and I want to retire by the time I'm 40. His philosophy was simple. Work smart, not hard. By the time he was 35, not 40, he traveled 6 months a year. And he saw the unexpected all over the world, did the unexpected all over the world. And he was quiet about it, modest about it. He wasn't impressed with people's millions or billions. He was impressed with the style of their life.
He was such a complex person.
Incisive.
Affectionate.
Suave.
Sharp.
Sarcastic.
Street smart. Tough.
Devilish.
Fabulous.
Sophisticated.
A world citizen.
Self-made businessman.
Whatever he touches becomes gold.
I learned a lot from him.
If you're in deep shit, you call Charles.
He knew everybody. The rules didn't apply.
Somebody who didn't need a lot of sleep.
They saw him always by night.
Drink, drink, drink in his glass with ice and vodka.
We went to Studio 54.
Playboy with a great heart.
Womanizing. He liked to pose.
The guy that your parents warned you about.
His wicked sense of humor.
The driest of the dry.
A very wide range of women friends.
And you were a man's man.
We laughed so much.
Trying to make your friends happy.
Interested in filmmaking, in arts.
Good at drawing out people.
He was so vain. That's what I loved.
He cannot live without laughing.
Is that funny? Is that funny? Hand on his head.
That little wicked grin, and then he'd hunch his shoulders a little bit.
When he was happy, there was a glow.
He just knew how to put it all together.
Charles is probably the best ambassador that the United States could have.
Without Charles, it ain't the same.
He had just sold his business, and he was so much full of joy to have sold that. He took me in his arms, and he was taller than I, and he took me off and started to dance with me.
It takes a certain amount of intellect to go from one type of industry to another type of industry.
He had a good sense of analyzing people.
He was one of the original investors in hedge funds.
I didn't even know how to spell hedge funds in those days. He was a pioneer and an eye-opener. Charles is always 3-4% or more above the average of the hedge fund performance, and sometimes even much more.
Well, he did a lot of business while he was still in bed. He had a red phone by his bed, which was the business phone. It was connected to his office.
Linda, I think I'll have a Bellini. And of course, then afterwards we went to Cipriani. He and I went to Cipriani for lunch, which was like his cantina. It was right downstairs.
We were out every night, probably 8 nights a week. All those girls, I was exhausted watching him. I don't know how the hell he did it.
I remember meeting Charles 100 years ago. There's an old Russian saying, if you want to be happy for one night, get roaring drunk. If you want to be happy for a year, have a love affair. If you want to be happy for 7 years, get married. But if you want to be happy forever, have 100 friends. And I think Charles did. He had 100 friends.
His telephone book was this thick.
First time we went to Gstaad together, he was going to go skiing. We got as far as trying on the ski boots. And that was it.
Charles made us one of the nicest wedding presents. He was so courageous and so priceless. He stepped on the stage. From 300 people, he only knew 5. He even took the effort to ask Sammy Kahn to help him, assist him with the lyrics. And this was the best wedding present Schneck and I got, and it touched all our hearts. And people still speak about it, that a gentleman coming from the United States stands up to be seen and is singing. I couldn't do it. Bravo, Charles.
I see my sister there sitting and flirting with what for me seemed to be like an older man. So I go up there, a bit furious, a bit protective, and wanted to intervene. But Charles, with his enormous charms, convinced me that he's a good guy. It never went into a romance with my sister, but Charles and me, we became great friends.
My dad was married for 40 years, and he was a solid husband and an amazing dad, but he also had this friend who could lead him to destruction if he wanted. I think that it was always a fight for my father, who did not have the world's greatest willpower, to be with his friend who had absolutely none.
I think we're the world record of getting from Europe to New Orleans. So we arrived with Concorde in New York, and Charles parked another private plane right next to Concorde. You see, this was impossible in those days. So we walked out of Concorde, and there was your father, with a Bloody Mary, standing at the entrance of the plane he had chartered. And we walked straight out of Concorde into his plane, right? And it was a great flight. It was London to New Orleans in 6 hours.
It intrigued them. It was just so different from anything they knew. They have all this tradition. They know where they've come from, and they know where everybody else is from. And suddenly here's this self-made, guy from New York.
He went to Europe every year. Every year he met more and more people, and they all became his friends. He had as many friends there as I think he had in America.
Somehow his spiritual home became Europe with the time.
In Paris, in London, it was immediately his town. He felt well wherever he was.
People would never ask Charles, where you're from, because there was no need.
It was called Mortimer's, and all this place had were a couple of good sandwiches and hamburgers, and there we had to go every Sunday. Although there are so many good restaurants in New York, that was a bit of a shame.
Charles and me, we had lunch. He lit up a cigar. There were these dreadful people complaining it's disgusting and all this. And they were really becoming obnoxious, you see. And I'll never forget, the head waiter looked at them and said, if Mr. Evans wants to smoke, he can smoke, you may leave. I mean, it was classic, the usual. These people, they shut up. And the whole restaurant lit up, So that's what Charles was like, People loved him, and whatever he did, people accepted.
Arnim, I have some good news and some bad news. And I said, what are the good news? Yeah, I throw a party for you in my apartment, Park Avenue. And then I asked him, what are the bad news? Yeah, I'm going there with your girlfriend. And I was a little bit shocked. But anyway, I wasn't jealous because we shared everything, so why not the girl?
Eileen Ford is giving the most beautiful cocktails. When you go there, just make sure that you get at least one telephone number. I said, of course, what do you think? No problem. So we went in, and there were in this room 30 of the most unbelievable girls you can imagine. And I see Charles digging in, speaking to one of them, and I go around like a bee, trying to talk to all of them. At the end, we come out, and he says, and how many numbers do you have? I said, shit, I don't have one. And he said, you see, I have 3. I said, come on, give me one. He said, no way, you have to get your own numbers.
Ernst, I hear you're giving a party. I said, Charles, it's not for you. It's not for me either. It's for young kids. They're all 18 or 20. He says, I'm coming.
One girl would be sitting in his office, and one girl would be coming to the front door, and I'd have to go and distract her while Charles had the other lady leave, and I'd pretend it was a business meeting.
He was involved with 3 Susans, so that was a little confusing to me. I didn't know which Susan I was picking up.
He wouldn't be a playboy if he wouldn't like beautiful women.
From Charles's point of view, having a long white jacket with his name, Dr. Charles Evans written on it, it meant he could examine anybody he wanted to because he was the doctor. If you got to know Charles really well, he was always filled with questions about you, as if a doctor would.
He had this contact with you, and he always showed interest in you, and he always wanted to know what was going on. And you can't help but falling for somebody like that.
Let's Jente, he always said, Bummermais, let's talk people, what's news, and what's happening in the social life, and so on and so on. He loved that.
He loved these tete-a-tete lunches and tried to really get under your skin and be really a pal.
He was dangerous to be around. He was so intoxicating, and when you're intoxicated, you do silly, funny things.
Charles is out there at the outside bar, blindfolded, with 10 shot glasses in front of him. He was doing a vodka taste test. And, and the bartender told me that he got 7 out of 10 right.
It was the worst flight of my life, and I don't fly well. We had this landing, it was in Palm Beach, and we hit the runway, and it was like the plane was fishtailing. And he looked at me and he said, I have a feeling we're going to land soon.
If the worst shit situation you were in, he'd always make a really good joke about it and, you know, drag it into a different perspective.
It was as if I walked into an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel.
He really loved the living, the actual flesh, you know, skin and bones aspect of living. He relished it, and he was unflinching about it.
You're not really gone until we all who remember you have followed you.